Oh, hello. In today's video, we're going to talk about Star Wars Shatterpoint. We have a shower thought. Do eras need an overhaul? So, I've been over this before. I've done a couple of videos on the sort of topics of list building in Shatterpoint because I find it really interesting. It really kind of speaks to me. Um, but I want to just quickly remind everyone what the eras are. So, Star Wars Shatterpoint doesn't like constrain you in any way other than with the eras. So you don't have to play all rebels together, or all separatists together, or all empire together. You can have whatever you want, but you're just vaguely constrained by who was around at that time period, right? Now, the other thing to consider is that your strike team is divided into two halves, and you can somewhat confusingly have each half of your strike team be from a different era as well, which seems odd. Now, the eras are not defined by AMG, they're defined by Lucasfilm, right? Slash Disney, but we'll say Lucasfilm. And essentially, you've got, I've said this before, and I've got the screen on here, you've got the Fall of the Jedi era. There are more than these four eras, but these are the only four eras that have any Shatterpoint releases at the moment, right? You've got the Fall of the Jedi era, which is the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, so the prequels, also Tales of the Jedi, also the Clone Wars TV show, right? Then you've got the Reign of the Empire, okay? So this is basically the period between the prequel films and the original trilogy, right? So this is where you'd find Tales of the Emperor, Tales of the Jedi, Bad Batch, Solo movie, remember that one? The Obi-Wan Kenobi show, Andor, which is truly amazing. And if you're not watching Andor at the moment, what are you doing? Rogue One, Star Wars Rebels, and a couple of other properties, right? Then you've got the Age of Rebellion, which is basically your dad's Star Wars. Okay, so A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, also Star Wars Outlaws, Battlefront 2, some of the video game bits, right? And then finally you got the New Republic era, which is the things that are happening after the end of Return of the Jedi. Okay, so Mandalorian, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and Skeleton Crew. So let's have a look at the Shatterpoint units that belong to each era. So this is the entire cast of characters that we have from Fall of the Jedi. And as you can see just by drinking in the slides here, there's not very much that jumps out at you as not making sense. It is mostly clones, right? Droids, and a few ancillary characters here and there. Okay. Let's break this down though. So I've highlighted some characters here that I think arguably don't fit. And actually, while I'm sitting here doing this live, because there are a few more that don't fit, aren't there? Right? There's no real reason. I'm going to just grab my pen here. There's no real reason why. Why is the Inquisitor here? So let's circle him as well. Right? His box doesn't make sense in this era. Right? So let's get rid of those as well. So the way I've done this, just when I realise I've made mistakes, anything that's circled in blue doesn't really belong in this era. Okay? So what have I circled in blue? Well, we've got Darth Vader, Jedi Hunter. Now, Darth Vader, Jedi Hunter, when he came out, I understand why they gave him this era because, you know, otherwise he wouldn't have been usable in the game at the moment he released, and that's kind of a big deal for sure. Okay, but Darth Vader does not. If we just look at the timeline here, this era really ends with Darth Vader's creation. At the moment at which Anakin Skywalker puts on or is put into the Darth Vader suit, that is essentially the end of the Fall of the Jedi. So you can argue Darth Vader sort of exists in the Fall of the Jedi, but only at the point in which he still looks like Anakin Skywalker. I know in Revenge of the Sith, Darth Vader is on screen for about 35 seconds to famously shout, "No!" Right? But Darth Vader as a character really shouldn't exist in this era, okay? It's the same with the Inquisitors, as I just realized making the video. They really, truly belong to the next era we're going to look at. They really don't belong to the Fall of the Jedi era. They're not around until the Empire is established, okay? And we've also got Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding. This is very clearly a very specific snapshot of Obi-Wan. It's Obi-Wan as he appears in the Obi-Wan show, okay? And again, really doesn't belong and really feels weird in this Fall of the Jedi era. Fall of the Jedi era, we have General Obi-Wan Kenobi, very much the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this era, okay? I don't understand. I don't basically understand why this stuff that I've circled in dark blue, which is very much telling a totally different kind of story. This is, this is Darth Vader hunting down the remaining Jedi after the fall. Like, that's the whole plot beat. I don't understand why these are in the Fall of the Jedi era itself, okay? Now, there's a couple of other things I've highlighted in green. The things I've highlighted in green are things that belong in this era, but they arguably belong in additional eras as well, so more eras than they have. We've got Cad Bane. Cad Bane, of course, appears all the way through into the Mandalorian, right? Cad Bane should exist in every era, in my view, okay, because we have his canonical death in technically it's in the Book of Boba Fett, but the Mandalorian, right? Which may not even be his death, okay, because we're showing him still being somewhat alive, so he should be in more eras. Hondo, I know there may not be massive Hondo fans, but the Hondo Okinawa box, so Hondo, Guam, and the concept of Weequay pirates, just as a generic thing, they basically should exist all the way through as well. There's never a moment. Hondo, I don't think has had. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Hondo hasn't had a canonical death, right? So again, I don't understand where, and he shows up in a few different places along the way, and I don't think, for example, when he shows up in Rebels, he's desperately changing his personality, not at first anyway. So again, I think Hondo should exist in more eras. Lord Maul. Now, if they want to do another version of Maul, I'm totally here for that. A sort of Reign of the Empire era Maul, where it's more focused on being a crime lord. But if you look on Lord Maul's card, he has the tags for like the syndicate tags. He's the only thing in the game that has those syndicate tags. He's clearly designed to be that Maul as well. So I think he should carry over into Reign of the Empire, right? And actually, arguably, the rest of his squad, right? Garth Saxon and the Mandalorian Super Commandos, they appear in Rebels as well, right? Their plot is really resolved in Rebels. They persist after this event, after this the close of Revenge of the Sith. They also persist. So I don't understand why they're locked to this first era of Star Wars either. What else have I highlighted? So Aura Singh. Aura Singh dies in the as much as Aura Singh is a character anybody cares about, she dies in the Solo movie, I believe. So she should persist at least a little bit into Reign of the Empire. I'm less like strident about that one, but I think it's probably fair. And Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More, like it's kind of muddied the water because they brought out Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum. And it's like, what is the snapshot that is Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More? What is the snapshot that's Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum? Jedi No More Ahsoka is kind of definitely late Clone Wars, right? By the time we see her after that, is she definitely Fulcrum? I think you can argue it either way. I have to say, I really don't like, from an era's point of view, I really don't like this latest jewel box that they've come up with, because I don't really understand what the difference between Jedi No More Ahsoka and Fulcrum Ahsoka is supposed to be, and I don't really understand what the difference between Darth Vader Jedi Hunter and Darth Vader Fallen Master is supposed to be in terms of the timeline that they are picked up from. But that might be my lack of understanding. And again, if you can help me with that, something in the comments. But these are the changes I'd make to the first era, to the Fall of the Jedi. I've also pulled 2 characters back from a later era. We've got these are the only 2 I can think of that should be added to this era. Dengar, the Demolisher, and Bosk, Single-Minded Slayer. Bosk certainly shows up in the Clone Wars TV show looking exactly the same. I think Dengar also briefly shows up in the Clone Wars, as much as Dengar shows up in anything, right? But I'm pretty sure both of these guys should be present in this first era of the Shatterpoint game as well. So those are the changes I'd like to see. We remove the things I've circled in blue, including the ones that I've just hastily done now, and we're gonna add Bosk and we're gonna add Dengar. Pretty light touch on the changes, okay, and then just some things I've highlighted in green to flag up that they are currently locked to this era, and they probably shouldn't be, right? So then we've got the Reign of the Empire. Now, Reign of the Empire is a pretty tiny era in terms of things that are in it. And if we look at the things here, the only box that is exclusively Reign of the Empire is CT9904, so Evil Crosshair, and his secondary and his squad. They are the only things that are locked to the Reign of the Empire tag. So what is era? Sorry. So what is Reign of the Empire? Well, this is the Bad Batch, okay? Solo, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, Star Wars Rebels, and Rogue One. As far as Lucasfilm is concerned, you know, this is everything from the end of Revenge of the Sith. So essentially, Darth Vader is strolling around, okay, but there's and the Empire is establishing itself, but we've not yet completed um, the construction of the Death Star. I actually because people like if the line is between Rogue One and A New Hope, right? That is a very fine line. I think if you're cleaving for a canonical event that separates these 2 eras, I would suggest it was the dissolving of the Imperial Senate, okay? Because it's not quite the completion of the Death Star, because the Death Star was completed towards the end of Rogue One. It's not quite the Battle of Yavin, because there's a chunk of time at the start of A New Hope that is before the Battle of Yavin, right? So I think where Lucasfilm essentially are drawing the line is the dissolution of the Galactic Senate, right? Which is not something they've ever shown us, right? But we know it happens. We know that the Senate is still there during Rogue One, and almost bang on the start, one of the first early into A New Hope. That's the big galaxy-changing moment when the Empire transitions from ruling through the sort of the bureaucracy to trying to rule directly through governors and the Death Star. Now, this is the most problematic one because, as we'll see, the cast of rebels, all of them, aren't on this slide, right? AMG are drawing the line somewhere differently to Lucasfilm for some reason that I don't understand. And this could be because of Lucasfilm changing their way they organize things at some particular point. I don't know. It could be because the guys that run AMG have a better idea of where they're trying to draw the line. I think, and I could be wrong, it's really hard because Rebels is a huge timeline. Like, early Rebels should definitely be in, even if you say that they're drawing the line in like the whole of Zero BBY, but not just after the Battle of Yavin, but like in everything in the build up. So Rogue One, they're putting in the next era. It's just such a tricky line. It seems like for whatever reason they're slotted in Andor and not Andor is in this era, but Rogue One is in the next era, and Rebels is in the next era. But even saying Andor is in this era is really hard because obviously that made sense when it was Andor season one. You notice they're given Cassian Andor dual era, so you can play him as Andor during the reign of the Empire. But K2SO isn't in this era because he only exists in Rogue One, which they've decided is in the next era. But now with Andor season two, we've just seen, if you're caught up with Andor season two, they've just started to introduce K2SO. So how does that now work? I think they really need to rationalize this, and I would suggest bring it in line with what Lucasfilm are doing more generally. So you end up with not many changes to what they've got. I think everything they have in Reign of the Empire should be in Reign of the Empire, right? So all of this stuff is correct and should be here. I don't think there's very much that needs to be like expanded. If anything, I think they've been a bit too permissive with tags for things in Reign of the Empire, right? But all this other stuff that I've added on the screen arguably needs to be added to Reign of the Empire. So we got Dengar, he's still around. I've put in both the IG droids. IG 88B, definitely. IG-11, I'm just going off the basis of when the IG, because the IG droids definitely don't get to go in the first era. Because if you research when the IG droids were created, it was just at the end of the whole separatist thing, right? Stormtroopers. What? Look, canonically now, according to AMG, you can have shore troopers in the Reign of the Empire, but you can't have regular white armored stormtroopers. That flat out makes no sense, right? Same with the stormtrooper sergeant and the snowtroopers and the snowtrooper lieutenants. They should all be in Reign of the Empire, surely. Reign of the Empire is when you would have the most stormtroopers because no one's really shooting at them. Well, no, people are shooting at them, but not as many of them have been shot yet, right? Bosk, of course, is still just around. I don't think Bosk has had a canonical death. Let me know in the chat in the comment about Bosk's canonical death. And then I brought forward all the cast of rebels. So we got Callus, he should be there. We got all the rebel crew. We got Thrawn, K2SO, obviously. Now I've got Ahsoka Tano and Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum and Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More because I'm super unclear. At least one of them, because right now one's for the Clone Wars and one's for the Galactic Rebellion. At least one of them should be in Reign of the Empire. I'm not totally sure what AMG are doing with Ahsoka, but I think if you can have Vader Jedi Hunter and Vader Fallen Master, that I still think are basically the same Vader, if they can have two Vaders here, you could have two Ahsokas and let people choose, you know, do you want Ahsoka from near the start of this era before she's sort of thrown in properly with Bail Organa, or do you want Ahsoka once she's more established in this era and she's working out as Fulcrum, working for the Rebellion, or not quite the Rebel Alliance at that point, but what will become one of the biggest cells in the Rebel Alliance, working with the Spectres and doing all those things. I would stick both of them in. The Mandalorian Super Commandos and Gar Saxon, they get to appear in this era as well, right? Darth Maul, he's still here, right? Doing his stuff. He gets killed in this era by this era's Obi-Wan, effectively, on Tatooine. That's what happens to him, but he's still around in this era to arrive at his demise. The weak ways just persisting in the galaxy, being weak ways. Not too sure about Guam canonically. I think he goes off and does something else and becomes a rival to Hondo. So maybe this version of Guam shouldn't be here, but Hondo certainly should be. Aura Singh meets her demise in this era as well. And Cad Bane, we know he's just around. He doesn't go anywhere. He shows up again in the Mandalorian. So Grand Admiral Thrawn, obviously, as well, because he's the main antagonist in Rebels. He should be in this era, right? So there's a lot of things I would add to the Reign of the Empire era, nothing I really want to take away. And now we've got the Age of Rebellion. So the Age of Rebellion, like I said, this is the 70s films, essentially. This is your dad's Star Wars. So this is the trilogy, and then there's some of the games, Outlaws, Battlefront 2, bits and pieces, and there's loads that I want to change here. Okay, why is the Mandalorian like? Why is the Mandalorian in this era? He's not exclusively in this era, but he has this era on his card, and I don't understand why. Maybe the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, was around in this era, but this version of the Mandalorian that we have in the Certified Guild box is so it's so many of the abilities on his card are actually Grogu that's doing the stuff. So why is he? Grogu doesn't exist in this era, right? 110%. Kanan, Kanan dies, right? During the run of the Rebels show. I mean, he's only here because AMG put Rebels in the wrong place for whatever reason. I don't mind with the rest of the Rebels can stay here as well. That they're all still around. They all survive. They all survive onto the Ahsoka show. Arguably, we shouldn't have Ezra Bridger, right? So I don't know why I haven't coloured him in. We should also remove Ezra Bridger, right? Remembering the plot of things, which is a helpful thing to do when you're essentially talking about the lore of Star Wars through the lens of a game mechanic. So Ezra shouldn't be here, but the other rebels, I'm sure they can stay. Yeah. Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding. I don't think he should be here. I've heard some people arguing that, like, oh well, he can represent old Ben as well. We don't have an old Ben model at the moment, and it's essentially functioning the same Obi-Wan. If you really want, I won't fight you, but personally, I would love them to do another Obi-Wan. I would love them to do Alec Guinness Obi-Wan for old Ben Kenobi. I know he's not in A New Hope for that long. Maybe he could have some kind of ability that when he maybe he only has like 2 wounds, and he has some kind of ability like when he dies, and if you actually get around to removing him from play, he can affect the game in some way from death, because to represent the whole, he was one of the few, not many Jedi mastered the whole Force Ghost thing, but I would love to see an old Ben. He would have a rule: if you strike me down, I'll only become possible. And you can imagine you die and you remove him and stuff happens. Like, there's a whole mechanic there that you could have. I don't exactly know how they do it, but I think old Ben is different enough to this Obi-Wan that I want to remove this Obi-Wan and I want to give them space to put in old Ben. Right? If they're never going to do old Ben and they know that, they should leave this Obi-Wan here. That's fine. I'd rather he was there, but yeah. We don't need 3 Darth Vaders in this era. I fundamentally believe we only need 1 Darth Vader in this era, because in this era, Darth Vader is the Emperor's servant. Right up until the end of his life, that's what he's doing until those last 3 minutes when he's redeemed and he throws the Emperor down a big hole. You can argue with me if you want. If you're a big Darth Vader fan and you know the ins and outs, you've read all the comics and everything else, tell me, well, we need Fallen Master, we need Jedi Hunter in this era because blah 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 blah. And I realise that I'm basically saying is I want to take 2 of the 3 Darth Vaders and lock them to an ancillary era, which maybe isn't the best thing from gameplay purposes, but I don't understand why they're here to represent the different mood Vader is in that day. It doesn't. We get rid of K2SO. Obviously, we're giving more eras to the Stormtrooper Sergeant. We get rid of Grand Admiral Thrawn. He's very annoying because of all the eras he can show up in. This is exactly the era he shouldn't be in. This is the era where he's off, banished to a different dimension. The Inquisition stuff's kind of done, right? They kind of only really exist in Reign of the Empire as well, so let's bin those off. They shouldn't be here. Why is Grief Karga in this era? What? Grief Karga's barely... What? Like, why is... It doesn't make any sense, does it? Krennic's dead, Andor's dead. I've said that I want to give more eras to Luke Skywalker. It's just because he shows up in The Mandalorian, right? Being this version of Luke Skywalker. He survives into the New Republic and he can show up a bit. Why not? ISB agents can have more eras. Sure, there'll be ISB agents in the Reign of the Empire. Snowtroopers in Reign of the Empire. Why is... Now, Moff Gideon's a really interesting one because you go backwards and forwards. Like, Moff Gideon And the Siege of Mandalore, as far as anyone can work out from the canon, takes place during Operation Cinder. So that being the case, I kind of want to kick all of Moff Gideon's boxes and say, look, that's all New Republic stuff. It's right on the cusp for sure. And people are saying that Disney might change the canon and move around where Moff Gideon sort of eventually ended up sticking. But I kind of think Moff Gideon and the Dark Troopers shouldn't be in this era. They are the antagonists from the Mandalorian, and they should stay in the main era for the Mandalorian, right? What else? Callus doesn't need to be here. That's pointless. Give some more eras to the IG units. That's fine. Give more eras to Bosk. Stormtroopers. Yeah. Basically covered everything. And then the only things I need to add to this era that should be here that aren't, again, we got Cad Bane. Doesn't appear in these films, but he should logically be around at this time. And the same with Hondo and crew. Hondo and crew should also logically be around at this time because they show up later, right? Hondo shows up in Resistance, I think, like the anime that's the prequel to the sequel trilogy. So yeah, good. Moving on. So this is the these are the cards at the moment that feature in the New Republic era. You know, there's not very many, and honestly, the Armorer box is the only one that is solely locked to New Republic. It makes squad building with the Armorer box pretty difficult. Not that challenging because they gave you Bo-Katan and the Cancrease Mandos, which really the only things you'd want to run with are really, and you've got the Mandalorian as well. So it's all. This is really much the Mandalorian era, right? It's the main thing that carries on here. They haven't really done anything with Ahsoka, which is fundamentally the issue. We know the Ahsoka stuff is coming; it's on the way. I'm not sure why the concept of bounty hunters has died. Okay, so we've got the generic bounty hunters. Famously, Grief Karga runs a bounty hunter guild. I don't know if you've seen The Mandalorian. Basically, the entire plot of The Mandalorian season 1 is that there's plenty of bounty hunters in the galaxy. So I don't know why we lost the generic bounty hunters. So let's bring them back. Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ahsoka should definitely be here. Now I appreciate they might want to do a different Thrawn and a different Ahsoka to tie in with the Ahsoka show. But the fact is, we've seen upcoming boxes. We've certainly seen the bad guy side of what they're doing for Ahsoka, and it doesn't include Grand Admiral Thrawn. So it's going to be a bit of an annoying thing if you can't run Grand Admiral Thrawn with his like other guys that he has in the Ahsoka show on his side, as it were. I could totally buy. Probably don't need to say that Ahsoka Tano and Fulcrum should be because they're probably going to have another Ahsoka that comes out. With probably, I would bet that the next 2 boxes to be revealed, we just have 2 evil boxes for the Ahsoka show. I would guess that the next 2 boxes that they're going to preview at Mini Stravaganza will probably be good guy boxes for the Ahsoka show, at least one. And so I would imagine we're going to get a box with a new Ahsoka in. I don't know what else would come in that box, but it's probably what's going to happen. Because this seems going clumps, right? So we got like Rogue One, we got a bad guy box, and we got the Krennic box with an extra unit, and we got 2 good guy boxes, and we got all the way, and this is Rogue One. So now we're going to do Ahsoka. We've seen preview of the 2 bad guy boxes, so we'll probably do a good guy box with a new version of Ahsoka. Then maybe a grown-up Sabine, okay, like another Sabine. We could bring Sabine into this one, but I think that's teenager Sabine. We need adult Sabine, and things like that, right? And maybe grown-up Ezra Bridger, but yeah, over 2 boxes it might work. Yeah. So that's it. That's basically the whole video. Honestly, I think they should bin off eras. I think they should just say, you know what? You don't have to worry about what area models, and you can mix and match them freely. Because as they're set up now, they have created a restriction on an army building list that I've hopefully shown doesn't really bear out in canon. So it's not really accomplishing anything, right? Except being this arbitrary restriction. Now, some people have said the arbitrary restriction is the point. Like, Cad Bane would be overpowered if he could mix freely with all the other bounty hunters. So that in different eras as a balance mechanic, precisely because they want to stop you building the lists that you're salivating at the prospect of building. And whilst I could believe that, that's like really sad if true. If it's truly a playtesting thing, if it's truly a well, if we put these things in eras where they could technically go, we've broken our own game, so we're not going to do it. Man, like I just don't want that to be the case, you know. But I think if they're going to persist with eras, and some people have suggested it's a stipulation from Lucasfilm, they do need to overhaul them. And the overhaul is based on the fact that they invented the Reign of the Empire era after release. So a bunch of things that have both Fall of the Jedi and Age of Rebellion have both Fall of the Jedi and Age of Rebellion precisely because the Reign of the Empire didn't exist. When the game very, very first came out, there was two eras. There was Fall of the Jedi, there was Age of Rebellion, right? And things that fell between them, they had both, right? And it's the same reason the bounty hunters don't have New Republic, because when the bounty hunters came out, New Republic didn't exist, right? And I don't think it was planned to exist. So understand that, right? The other issue is where AMG have put Rebels and Rogue One. They seem to think that they belong in the Age of Rebellion, which just doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And I think they should straighten that out as well. But ultimately, actually, I think they should bin off the whole thing. I also think that, like, I've been hanging around a lot on the official Shatterpoint Discord, reading what's been said, talking a lot about potential Andor lists, because I'm a big fan of the TV show Andor, so I've picked myself up the Rogue One Cassian Andor box, right? And I've been looking at people saying, what lists does he go with? We've been having groovy conversations about Leia and Han and Luke and all these things. And then somebody comes in and goes, oh yeah, he pairs really well with Count Dooku. Now, my ears perked up for a moment because Cassian Andor and Count Dooku are two of my favourite people in Star Wars. They shouldn't really be going on the same team. They shouldn't really be on the same side for a number of reasons. You know, Scuttlebutt on the Discord is, if you take Dooku's box and Andor's box, they work really well together, because then when you get revenge, you can like move Dooku and then you can whack them, and it's a whole thing. And it's like, why are the rules permitting that, right, but not some of this other stuff? It just seems turbo arbitrary, and I don't like it, right? And it's like my one negative, my one complaint about this whole game is the eras are they're just this arbitrary thing that you just have to put up with, that don't really add anything or always make sense. So they should either scrap them or at least like smooth them out with some of the changes that I've pointed out. Now, I'm sure the people who are more Star Wars lore heads than me are going to be like, oh, yes, technically you've said this, but you know, IG-88 was reprogrammed in 27 million BBY and therefore can't be this other thing. I'm sure I've messed some stuff up, right? So I'd love to hear that in the chat as well. In the chat, in the comments, in the YouTube comments, do let me know. All right. And I'm not blind to the gameplay thing either. Like, it sucks to tell people that love Darth Vader, which is most Star Wars fans. I actually think, you know, 2 of your 3 Darth Vaders, they should only really exist in Reign of the Empire, which is this tiny little era. It's cool for Empire players that generally all of their stuff exists in Age of Rebellion, so they can mix and match their teams freely, right? Like, that is cool, and part of me doesn't want to take it away from them. I just get annoyed at the dichotomy of saying, well, we got this system, but the system doesn't make sense. Okay? I think I've said my piece. So I want to say thank you to everyone who subscribes, comments, likes, etc. Consider joining the Discord. I do tend to talk more about Kill Team than about Shatterpoint, but I am trying to gradually up the amount of Shatterpoint content on the channel, so we arrive eventually at parity. I'm live streaming tomorrow. Great to see some Star Wars fans in the live stream. I don't know what topics are going to be yet. Obviously, we're waiting on the big Shatterpoint balance patch, which, I mean, it could have gone up right now for all I know. But once that's up, there will be a video on that. In the meantime, it just falls to me to thank Nightfall, who doesn't want to be thanked in Star Wars videos, but I'm going to do it anyway. Ha ha ha. And Samtroth, who support me at the highest possible tier. Thank you so very, very much. And I'll see you again next time or in the live stream tomorrow. Cheerio. Bye bye. Bye bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye bye. Where's my OBS window gone? Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. There we go. Bye bye. Bye 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 bye.